just for the simple fact, bring those issues more to the forefront that I've been bringing them this year. And then, well, that'd be fine. I'll pass it back to you.
Well, first I'd like to say that I'm the first undergraduate person running for president that I've ever heard of that has had the gall to reach out and put a graduate student on the slate. The first phone call I made was to Mike Shane, undoubtedly the most qualified person on this or any other campus to be an executive vice president. He's worked hard, and he's one of the best, genuinely best people I know, and he's ready to step into this position. And he knows the affairs of grad school, and he knows the affairs of undergrads. Well, one thing I would like to say really quickly, sorry, I must have flattered you. One thing I would like to say really quickly is that under my opponent's leadership, the Graduate Student Council, and those of you that are in the Senate can attest to this, has distanced themselves from the Senate, from the executive branch, specifically in this Frizzell administration. And as soon as I get in office, I'm going to reach out to the new grad school council, try to rebuild those bridges because they are important just like any other council. And I want them to be represented just like every other council is. No matter how big, like arts and sciences, or small like dental. Every council is equally important. And in my first day, I'm going to reach out to those new officers, well, as soon as they get elected, and say, let's rebuild these bridges. Let's see what common ground we can find. Let's work together. And let's not repeat these last couple of years because they've been a tragedy and it's terrible. But I'm not going to stop at grad. I'm going to go to dental. I'm going to go to medical. I'm going to go to every single school that makes this university so great. And I'm going to really rebuild our SGA, bring us back, and I'm going to make sure that the unite part of Cards Unite doesn't go vague.
Well, just to clarify a few things on that. As far as grad student council goes in general, we've had higher participation this year, especially when it comes to people offering their opinions on how to make things better. Graduate student council operates differently than a lot of councils because we're primarily advocate-driven to the U of L and not so much event-driven. But when it comes to actual Senate, I mean, to a certain degree, it is the Graduate Student Council that is constantly looking over the resolutions, constantly approving things. And I don't mind being the person to address the white elephant in the room. And, unfortunately, sometimes when the Graduate Student Council or its leaders or membership are being cut out of important things and important decisions about consultation, yes, it is a bit of tension that has to be addressed. And I wouldn't actually be the first Graduate Student Council president to come off in that manner sometimes. And it's not a bad manner. It's just simply saying we all have our constituencies, and any senator who's in the Senate not advocating for their constituencies as best they can is not really doing their job to a certain degree. And so when you are representing a left-out population in large degree, yeah, I mean, sometimes emotions flare, and I'm willing to come out there and come swinging in many ways. But that doesn't mean that I'm a difficult person to get along with, and it absolutely doesn't mean that I'm not an open-minded person. Because, as I said, over the years, I've been doing this for a very long time, not in student government, but other things. Because people come to me. They come to me with their problems, and they're coming to me because they want a solution. And they know that I'm willing to go stand up against the machine to make sure it happens.
Okay. Kind of on that same note, you both are strong community people. You both have been vocal. With that, sometimes comes the ruffling from people's feathers, and you don't always, you don't always be the most beloved person in the room. But still, as SGA president, you have to be.
First, let me say that I think both of us have a tendency to ruffle feathers, but one of my personal heroes that I got to have the opportunity to work with this summer, as I mentioned, I was statewide volunteer coordinator for the Kentucky Democratic Party, and in that capacity, I was the volunteer coordinator for the re-election campaign for Governor Steve Beshear. And one of my favorite lines that Steve Beshear says it comes right at the end of one of his go-to stump speeches, and it says, "But I'll do anything to stand up and do what's right for the people of Kentucky." And I'll take that to heart because I will do anything. I'll ruffle feathers, I'll shake hands, but I will do what is right for the people at the University of Louisville. Now that being said, I'd like to go back to my work at the Kentucky Democratic Party and a lot of cooperation we had to have there. There's two different things when it comes to state politics. There's the party system and there are campaigns. Each candidate has their individual campaign, and then there's the party that works with all the Democratic campaigns. I work for the party. And a lot of the times the party and the individual campaigns necessarily get along too well. Our Secretary of State currently, her campaign for Allison Leonard and Grimes wasn't too keen on working well with the board. But as statewide volunteer coordinator, it was still my responsibility to get out volunteers, 500 volunteers statewide, to make those phone calls, over 100 phone calls a day, to make sure they were at our events, to plan those events in every area of the state, some areas of the state that I've never been to. I had to work to make sure that even though she was sending things to us saying, stop helping, we have this, we don't necessarily need you, it was still my job, and I knew my job was to get her elected. And I worked day in and day out, and I made those phone calls, and I set up those meetings, and I organized those events all over the state. And at the end of the day, she got elected, whether she wanted it or not.
So, from my experience, this comes from my non-SGA experiences, because the very first time I took office as president of my fraternity, and we had just gone through, the very first meeting I had run was a membership vote in the fraternity. So for those of you that are Greek, you understand what that is. Those of you that aren't Greek, if you can imagine like moving somebody from office and say SGA, but twice the drama and even worse, tempers flare. And the biggest challenge with something like that is when you have a chapter that is pretty well split in half on their opinions on the matter, it makes the beginning and the remainder of your term very difficult. And it took me a good year and a half to work and rebuild the bridges together. Not just myself, the people, of course, I got along with them just fine, but trying to get the people to interact with people, trying to make the organization strong, keep it together, and not only that, but move forward. And that, my friends, is very, very difficult to do sometimes. Because you're not just dealing with one person or a few people, you're dealing with all sorts of people who just hate each other and add their throats, and you're trying to make it work cohesively and make sure that people remember that, hey, we're here to become better men together. And so that's kind of the spirit I want to bring to SGA in general.
I'll say something real quick. Yeah, I'm on the EC of my fraternity too, and just so everybody knows, being on the EC, just you're a glorified baby especially for a fraternity. I completely sympathize with the pledge votes. I'm in charge of the pledge votes for our fraternity, so I completely sympathize with that. And I can tell you right now, it's not easy trying to work with that.
This is actually.
Oh, never mind. Like I said a little earlier, it's halftime at the University of Louisville. And you have three choices between SGA presidents. Your student body president should be three things. It should be someone with experience, it should be someone you can relate to and trust, and someone you know that's going to go out and fight for you. I've worked in SGA for 2.5 years, and I've put 2 pieces of legislation through the Kentucky General Assembly. I have the experience. I've faced those issues that we will address. I pay for the commuter meal plan. My tuition has been raised every year that I've been here. And the other day, I was mugged off campus. So I understand the importance of safety here. These problems are as real to me as they are to anybody else here. And I've already shown through my organizing of the Rally for Higher Education, the drafting of those 2 pieces of legislation, and my continued vigor with the work and the legislators up in Frankfurt, that I will never ever stop fighting for you or anyone at this university. Like I said a little earlier, we have the potential for greatness, and it is within our grasp. And under the presidency of Max Morley, and under the work of the Cards Unite slate, we are going to be the leaders in the nation as a university, as an SGA, and as a student body at this university. Thank you.
Fellow students, as Max said, experience, trustability, and fighting for you. Those are 3 qualities which I have in great measure. Experience, I've been here for 12 years and constantly involved from day one, being involved in academic services, tutoring services, career services, labs, teaching, and then of course the student government and Greek life as well. As far as being able to relate and trust, I have people who come to me all the time asking me to solve their problems, whether it be anything administrative, into doing research, financial, you name it, or trying to figure out how to get maternity coverage for some of the people that we represent. If you want somebody that's going to fight for you, there's been somebody that has been fighting for you in the entire time in the Senate, making sure that there aren't abuses of power, making sure that your budget isn't going to just pay for the executive branch, and trying to also look at, before the contingency budget, but the real budget this year, trying to make sure that all the councils didn't have any council funding. And you're looking at that person right here. One thing is when it comes time to the actual regulations and legislation in Kentucky. One of the things I'm going to fight for, as I said, is for all students in the language explicitly, but also to use stronger words other than we urge the General Assembly to consider college affordability, but actually take something and change something that goes far beyond just the scope of a small resolution and actually do something about it.
All right, and then our last question, and it's an action in you, what quality you see in, just go with Travis right now, you could make him qualify as your president.
First, real quick on legislation, I want to point out that there is a resolution in a bill, and the resolution of the bill has much stronger language. But anyway, Travis is very, very passionate. You have your convictions, and you're very passionate about what you do. I mean, you speak up in every meeting that you're at, and you speak well and eloquently, and you speak on behalf of your constituents, and that's something that I really respect about you.
And I would have to say the same thing about Max. I mean, I know you and I disagree on a lot of things to a certain degree, but to a certain degree, you know, I don't take what Max says personally. I hope you don't do the same either, because we're here looking we're looking out for the best interests of everybody. And you know, U of L is diverse, and that also means diversity in opinions, and it also means that there's a diversity of ways of going about it. And so I also respect you very much for the fact that you are willing to step out, especially considering that you're not a senator and you're not a council president. You do come to those meetings, and you're there to express on behalf of the staff as well. I think that's great, Paul.
All right, thank you guys. Everybody.
Hold on. I want to do something last debate. Yeah. But
Making this a tradition.
to the RUFL
As we stand up for her family, all hail to the RUFL. We fight to win this game. Go hard, sing praises for our victory. To wish our UFL. All hail the Conference Spirit. All hail UFL. All hail, all hail, all hail. Go Cards!
Thank you all for coming out. Remember, the polls are open 20th.
Thank you. Sorry, I was driving me crazy.
Thank you all very much.
Her hair was blocking it.